Hello everyone, Jonesy here. In this video, you'll be learning by example how to create a navigation bar using React. By the end of this tutorial, you will have a navigation bar that looks like this. I want to go ahead and state early on that there are probably a million different ways to create a navigation bar. Maybe some are better than others. Maybe it is subjective. The way that I am creating this allows you to have complete control over everything you see visually. I know somebody is going to ask why I didn't just use Bootstrap, and the answer is because I want total control over styling. This way is much easier in my opinion, less debugging later on. Okay, let's get started. The first goal that I have when creating a navigation bar is to get a simple bar that goes across the screen. So how do I do that? You create a React component. I like to organize my files, so first come over here and create a folder called components. Inside of that folder, create a file called navbar.js. Inside of this file, we will create our first React component. So, import React at the top here, because it is needed. There are two different types of React components that you can create: functional components and class components. This time, we're going to create a class component, and the next component that we create, we can use a functional component. Class navbar extends React.component. Inside of our class component, let's just use as minimal amount of code as possible to make it simple. We want a render method. Inside, we need to put a return. And inside of return is where you start adding any HTML or other React components. Well, shoot, my Visual Studio Code is defaulting to 4 spaces for each indent, but I prefer 2 spaces. I'm going to change that real quick in the settings. All we are going to put inside of return is a div with a style. We can just call the style styles.navbar. Next, we need to create the CSS file to actually define these styles. Like most things in web design, there's a million ways to do this. The styling method I use is called CSS modules. To better organize, go over here and create a folder called CSS modules. Inside of it, create a file called navbar.module.css. Do not forget to put .module.css. It is important. Now, we can define our styles. So far, all we need is a style for navbar. So type .navbar, like so. The first thing that we want to add is position fixed. This fixes the navbar at a certain spot on the screen so that it will not move even if you scroll the page. Add top of 0 to set the top of the navbar div to the very top of the screen. Add a width of 100%. Because of course we want our navbar to take up the entire width of the screen. If we save all of this, nothing will happen for multiple reasons. The first is that we still need to import the styles into our navbar. Do that like so. If we save again, our website would still look the same. We need to import the navbar into app.js for it to show up. If you do that and then check the page, there is an error, and I know exactly why. I accidentally messed up. To fix this, simply drag the components and CSS modules folders into the source folder. Now go back to the browser. And there is no error, sweet. However, where is the navbar? It is not showing up for 2 reasons. 1, we need to give the bar some height. And 2, we need to change its background color so it is visible. You can make the height whatever you want. I settled with 65 pixels. Awesome. So we have a bar, not much navigation going on, but there is definitely a bar. When programming, this is the point where you stop and think, what is my next goal? What functionality is needed? I think it's time to add some items to this navbar. Maybe some text, maybe some buttons. Because I know that I want to add some items, the first thing I'm going to do is add some styling that will make the items look a lot better. I'm going to use a display of flex for the navbar. This basically lets you have a row of items that can be styled very nicely. CSS flex is a huge topic, so I recommend if you're confused to do some research. Otherwise, just copy what I do and everything will be okay. Put a flex of 1. This just tells it to take up the entire width of the row. By default, the flex direction is column, so make sure that it is row. That is good for now. Let's actually add some new items to our navbar. Just as an aside, I'm calling them items, but the correct term is probably DOM elements. I'm just trying to keep the terminology as simple as possible. Let's add a paragraph. Let's add a button and copy and paste it a few times. Now, let's see what it looks like. So our paragraph doesn't show up because the text is black, but everything is there. This doesn't look very good. However, without display flex, it would look even worse. It is super simple to make this look better. To change the color of the text, just type color white. Now, put justify content space evenly. There are many different options to use here, and I recommend that you mess around with them. Basically, what this does is it aligns all items inside the navbar horizontally. This depends on whether your flex direction is row or column, so keep that in mind. We can use align items in order to align our items vertically, which is super useful. Let's take a look. Sweet, this looks pretty good. I'm going to change a few things, but styling is very subjective, so feel free to style however you want. I don't like how these buttons look, so I'm going to replace them with spans. Also, I'm going to add styles to this paragraph and to each span. I am doing this because I want to change the size of the text. I want the brand to be larger than these nav buttons. Create.brand. Put whatever font size you want, and same for the nav buttons. Let's take a look. So it seems the font sizes didn't work. I forgot to define that the units are pixels. There we go. Alrighty. So yet again, what comes next? Well, think about it. What is missing? The ability to click these buttons and switch pages. But, first off, to switch pages, we need pages. We currently have none. A page is typically a complicated thing. Because of that, each page should be a component. Before I get to that, let's just try to make something show up under our navbar. We can just type a paragraph here, and we get an error. This is because there always needs to be one div as the parent inside of a return. So just put a div around these and go back to the browser. There is no longer an error, but where the heck is the text that is supposed to be there? So to understand why it is not here is a bit complicated. I'll give you a hint. The text is underneath the navbar. For a complete understanding of why, you need to know all about the DOM, or Document Object Model, and you need to know about CSS Position. I will try to summarize it. However, if you are serious about learning web design, you will absolutely need to understand all of this. We set this navbar to have a position of fixed. Doing this takes it out of the DOM flow so that the other DOM elements will not be affected by the navbar. It basically makes the navbar invisible to other elements. By default, DOM elements have a position of static and they interact with each other, appearing from top to bottom. So, if we want our text to appear below the navbar, we need to fill up the space of the navbar with an element that is in the DOM flow so that it is visible to other elements. There are multiple ways to do this, but I like using CSS spacers. Many people think they are hacky, but I think they are easy to use and just make sense. Let's create it. Go into navbar and put a div around everything with a style called spacer. Now create this style. It is meant to fill the entire space of the navbar as if the navbar was a part of the DOM flow. So it must be the same height and width as the navbar. Save it, and now you can see the text. I have a way to maybe give you a better understanding. All browsers allow you to debug your web applications using an inspector. Right-click on your navbar and press Inspect Element. When you hover over certain DOM elements like a div, they will highlight showing the space that they are taking up. Here is our navbar, and here is our spacer. They are both the same size, just as we wanted. Here is the paragraph DOM element directly below the navbar. I'm going to take out the spacer and show this to you again for a better understanding. You don't have to do this part. I'll just delete this, and now if you hover over the paragraph in the inspector, you see that it is hiding underneath the navbar. Again, this has everything to do with CSS Position. So, if you still don't understand, go watch my video on CSS Position. Now that I have thoroughly confused you, it is time to create our pages, each one being a component. If you want, go over here and create a new folder called Pages. Inside, create a file called home.js. Import React. This time, let's create a functional component. Super simple, just type function home. No render method is needed, just a return. Inside, you put the DOM elements, like a paragraph. Somehow, I forgot the parentheses. My bad. Go into app.js and put your home component in there. Save and check. Do not forget to import it. That is important. Save and check again. Cool. There is our page. Now, let's create the About page. Just copy the home page and paste it in. Change everything as needed. Put the About component into app.js and you will see both pages. However, this is not what we want. We only want to see the home page text on the home page and the About page text when on the About page. To do this, we need to use React Router from React Router DOM. Import it like so. I believe that React Router DOM is not installed by default. You can check this by going to package.json and look inside the dependencies. Indeed, React Router DOM is not here, so just go over to the command line, Control-C to stop your server, npm install React Router DOM. Now start the server back up, go back to app.js, add router, add switch, and define each route along with the page it takes you to. Use the route component. Type route exact. The path will be just a slash for the home page. Component is the home component. Copy and paste this and make the path and component props be for the About page. I would like to add one more page real quick. Call it nomatch.js. I will just copy and paste. This is the page for when the person goes to a route that is not valid. Add this route to app.js. It only needs the component prop. Don't forget to import it. Let's save and check it out. Now we are only seeing the home page. You can type /about up here and it should take you to the About page. It did indeed. If you type a path that is nonsense, like so, it will take you to the No Match page. And if you go back to the default path, it takes you home. Now, we can travel between different pages, but we want to be able to click the buttons on our nav bar in order to navigate. Setting that up is pretty easy. Go to navbar.js and import link from React Router DOM. Use this link component by wrapping it around your buttons. Define a prop called to in order to define the route to go to. Save and open the browser, and there is an error. We need to move our nav bar inside of router. To do this, just go into app.js and fix that real quick. Now there is no error, and you can see that the CSS has changed a little bit for the buttons. They're a little purple and underlined. You can easily change that, but what is important is that you can now click on each button and it navigates to the correct page. Heck yeah, dude. This next part isn't important, but I just want to change the text of the buttons back to white and remove the underline. Simply go back into the CSS file and give the nav button a color of white. Then go into navbar.js and add this style to the link components in order to get rid of the underlines. I don't usually recommend this type of inline styling, but sometimes it comes in handy. Awesome sauce. So you have now created your very first navigation bar. You have been introduced to a ton of new web programming terms, and you are on your way to becoming an expert. In the next video, we will begin building the layout for the home page. If you find any of this material useful, feel free to like and subscribe, because it will help me to continue making more. See you next time. Jonesy out.